Perfect. We're all in. We're all good? Perfect. I'll get the ball rolling. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining our roundtable discussion on cybersecurity of 2022. In this webinar, we will empower you with the knowledge and tools that will help shield you and your companies from cyber threats. And I'm going to let Ulrike take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine, for the introduction to our conversation today, in particular in light of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, very important. And may I add to this happens to be also Small Business Month for many. So it's a great combination to have this conversation for small businesses, as well as the cyber community and technologies and tools and solutions that we're here to provide and offer. So I'm Ulrike Bahr-Gedalia. I'm the Senior Director of Digital Economy, Technology and Innovation at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I'll be moderating today's panel, and I would like to give a big thank you to Idealogical Systems Inc. for having invited me to partake in this conversation. And may I note as well, the company is as well a member of the Canadian Chamber's Cyber Right Now campaign, focusing on cybersecurity and for Canada to be a global cybersecurity leader. So talk about leadership and how can we become global, more secure, and one of the most secure and safest countries in the world. So that's what we are here as well to showcase and help you all with. Clearly, the past 2 years have shown how the cyber landscape has changed immensely. More threats, attacks, breaches, and so forth. And it's not a novelty, I hope, to some maybe, but hopefully not to too many organizations listening into today's conversation. But as landscape changes and evolve, we also need to evolve with it. We need to transition, transform, we need to take new initiative and embrace new opportunities and listen and learn and then implement. That's what we're here for today. And we will cover 3 areas during our conversation. As soon we'll introduce the 3 esteemed speakers. We will look at the evolution of cyber activity, and then we move on to what should or could organizations do today to be more cyber safe, but also tomorrow. We want to look into the future, not only today. And thirdly, there will be a cybersecurity knowledge share, as we call it. So over to you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining this conversation today. And we have here Matt, Wayne, and David. Matt, may I start with you? Could you please introduce yourself and tell us why you're here today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Matt Moline. I am the head of sales and marketing over here at Grit Technologies. We're a managed service provider that services pretty much all of the lower part of Michigan, specifically just outside of Detroit and also Grand Rapids, Michigan. Why I'm here today, I think I don't want to speak for everybody, but for us, I'm here to help continually educate our partners and as well as our clients on the continually growing trends of cybersecurity. As we talk today, I think it's going to be pretty apparent that it is, unfortunately, it's getting worse before it's going to get better. But we have a lot of great people here, and I think we have a lot of great solutions that are going to help anyone here individually, or if you own a small to mid-sized business.
Thank you, Matt. And over to you, David. Same questions to you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me. David Vadasy. I'm a partner development manager with CaonnectWise. And we're a company that supports managed service providers like Wayne and like Idealogical, as well as Matt and the MSPs in Michigan and really all over the United States and North America, really around sharing best practices when it comes to cybersecurity, and to Matt's point, continually educating small to medium-sized businesses, on best practices around good cyber hygiene and what that looks like and why it's important. So.
Thank you, David. Great for having you here. We look forward to hearing your insights and learn from them. And Wayne, last but not least, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Wayne. I'm Vice President of Business Development at Idealogical Systems. And yeah, for the reasons everyone said, education is the most important thing to get out of these sessions. And it needs to happen on a regular basis because the threat vectors are coming in different every 6 months. And we're watching those closely and trying to identify the best practices or tools that may need to put out there to help protect your environment. So be able to get that perspective, again, from companies in the US, because those attacks tend to happen first before Canada, but we don't want to take that for granted. We want to learn from that and try and develop our own best practices here in Canada, especially working with the government as well, which is really encouraging to see, the suggestions we could put forward and help protect all businesses, including small to large. So being a part of that is very exciting and very challenging, but we're up to the challenge. So great to be here.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. And as we talk about different geographies, different sizes of companies and all sectors, so cybersecurity is really crucial basically to every business. Every business is a tech business these days. We all engage in digital activities and online. And so how can we protect ourselves and prevent, if at all possible, these kinds of incidents, so-called cyber incidents of all kinds of nature? Wayne, let me then stay with you, if I may. So you talked about the threat landscape and how it has changed. Maybe can you give us more details and insights and be a little bit more specific for us to understand? And you mentioned timelines, and I've been working in tech over 20 years, and the experience often tells me what we have experienced today might be different next month as well. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Absolutely. And, we can speak to it from an ideological perspective, what we see out there. And some of the big things, if we were talking a year ago, and these are still active today, but phishing and impersonations are big out there. So we're getting those emails that look like from Netflix or Amazon. They're trying to get you to click on something and enter some information in somewhere. Still very prevalent out there, but that was probably the biggest thing a year ago, where it was kind of actively just trying to hit as many people as they can, but also impersonations where maybe they get your password. You can log in and they're sending emails out as you, or trying to spoof, make it look like they're sending as you with other people, getting them to try and click on a link, stuff like that. So that was the big one, coming into the beginning of this year. Then we saw the zero-day attack. So if you don't know what a zero-day attack is it's essentially a vulnerability in an operating system, for example, Microsoft or Apple, where they don't even know where it exists, or they don't have a patch for it yet. So there's that vulnerability that's sitting there, and that could be exploited without actually some action or some tool to help kind of potentially catch that potential bad behavior before the actual patch is released. So that's a very kind of interesting windows that we're dealing with one after the other. And we're trying to get ahead of that so we can actually protect the environments before the patch that fixes the problem actually gets released. So that's been the big thing this year. And there's been tools that we've been recommending, and everyone I'm sure on the panel has been recommending about how to get ahead of that using AI technology and SOC teams to be able to analyze data and see trends in actions that are happening in order to get ahead of those particular attacks. And so that's what's really the big button that we're seeing right now that's happening. What we see kind of coming forward as an emerging trend is the mobile devices. I can't tell you how many texts I've been getting trying to me to click on a link and whatever the case may be, and those vulnerabilities on these devices are trying to be exploited. So they're testing, or they have some way of getting onto your phone. So a mobile device management piece to keep that as secure as possible is going to be the upcoming thing. That's the new vector that we see anyways, that's coming in definitely in the next year or so. So yeah, that's what we see. Hopefully I explained that correctly. Where we were, what's this year, and what's coming.
And along the lines, and that sounds really concerning, let's put it this way. So we need to look at the opportunities, how we protect, but also cybersecurity as an opportunity, right? To learn, to implement, to be aware and make others aware. I think we all have accountability, and I always say it starts with me and us in order to provide good leadership and lead by example. So, and in that context, to which industry or individuals do you see as groups that serve as the target, vulnerabilities and so forth, today and perhaps even also going forward. So anyone maybe on this call probably had also some experiences in the audience as well, and say, yeah, exactly when what you talked about, that happened already to me. So yeah, target audiences, what's happening there? Thank you.
With regards to targets, I can't say we see any particular trends to be. It really just comes down to who is the least protected. The least amount of barriers that the hacker community can find, those are the ones they're going to exploit. Either they're going to find something that's worth money, or they're at least going to be practicing their skills at an extreme kind of level. So it's really the more protection you get ahead of that, you put in front of these people, the less likely they're going to be able to get through. So, because those attack vectors are coming in on different areas where they're just looking for holes, where you're probably not protecting your phone, or you're probably not protecting your on-premise mail server, that kind of things. Those are where the big vulnerabilities are. So those need to be addressed by moving them to the cloud or putting something else in front of them. So I don't really see industries per se. Maybe Matt or David have a different perspective on that. We are seeing it could be from anywhere. We haven't had a consistent vertical that we've seen it actually attack through.
Yeah, good point, Wayne. If David or Matt, would you like to comment and chime in here, please?
I'll comment on that. On our side of things, specific to the US, one of the things, it does vary time depending on the year, and even everything that we went with 2020 and COVID. Not to keep talking about COVID, but one of the things we saw early 2018, 2019, and even still true today, is two specific verticals that seem to be getting the most attention, at least from our experience, is anybody in the construction and also manufacturing side of things. Typically, these two, they don't have a lot of reoccurring revenue as far as their vertical is concerned. They're very project-based type of business. So having IT as a focus seems to go to the wayside sometimes. I will say though that has been a lot of interest. Even myself personally, I've been invited this year to a couple different conferences and speaking about cybersecurity and those gaps, and how that there is a specific tack not only to the small to mid-sized market, but specifically into construction and also manufacturing. What's also helping though in that conversation is, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but the insurance world is also doing their due diligence and making, because they recognize the threat also, and we're getting calls from manufacturers and also construction companies saying, my premiums are going to be triple, than what they were unless I start putting these things in place. So that is helping, but also industry leaders in those verticals, whether they're part of an organization of themselves or part of other committees and things like that, they see it as a threat. There's been increases in ransomware attacks and things like that that have happened. So it's definitely getting attention, but there definitely still needs to be more in those specific areas.
Yeah, I would agree as well. Both what Wayne and Matt said, is accurate as far as hackers are really just looking for ways to exploit. They've become more sophisticated using automation. So it may not necessarily be that they're targeting a specific business as much as just looking for a vulnerability on a network. What we do see across, North America, kind of, helping a lot of different managed service providers. The industries we consistently see under attack, like Matt said, construction and manufacturing, finance, healthcare, legal, and then obviously just all those SMB businesses that fall below those types of verticals as well that are servicing those industries or markets. But yeah, it's really a combination of both. It's just looking for vulnerabilities as opposed to trying to target just a business.
Well, let me continue. Oh, sorry. Was there anyone else who wanted to add a comment? Matt, did you?
No, I just said I 100% agree with everything.
Okay, well.
And just one more thing to add is one of the reasons why the attack vector is increasing so much more is this now. The hacker community is so big, it's now become a hacking as a service, they're calling it, where you don't have to be super smart to know your coding and stuff to be able to get into places. You can buy packages, pre-built packages that'll give you the tools you need to be able to just plug away and look for those vulnerabilities and try and get into where you can. And that's where sometimes people are practicing. So that's how crazy it's gotten. So, and hacking as a service, I never thought that term would ever come to be, but here we are. So
well, it's taking off because it's also, there's money involved, but it's a multi-billion-dollar business. Billion, not million, billion, folks, and it's all through the dark web. It's an environment that's encrypted. It's an environment that is pretty secretive, very lucrative, and unfortunately, there's not. I think it's a resource issue more than anything, but there's a lot that unfortunately there's not a lot that can be done at the moment for that. But the responsibility comes down to you as individuals, but also you as a small business owner to understand that and protect yourself from that.
Well, along those lines, David, may I go back to you? How do you protect yourself there? So we talked about there isn't really, well, there are some particular industries you pointed out, but overall, they're looking for vulnerabilities. What tools are in place? Now we need to help protect. So some recommendations on this all sounds very overwhelming and quite frightening. But what tools are in place that you could recommend or have seen that work and that you could share with the audience?
It's usually starting out with it would usually be starting out by talking with your provider, like an Idealogical, about an assessment. There's security risk assessments that you can use, but then there's also the actual solutions, things like managed detection and response, having a SOC or a security operations center that is live technical experts that have security certifications, and they're basically your eyes on glass 24/7, watching for those network vulnerabilities and those things, those alerts to come through, where they can try and jump in as quickly as possible to remediate any type of an incident that you're having. So it's really that next level of security. And a lot of times these small to medium-sized businesses are challenged. They're challenged in terms of having the IT team that may have security skills or expertise needed to be able to do any of the in-house secure. So they want the ability to be flexible and be available all the time, but they don't necessarily have the ability to do it in-house. So it's going to be using things like managed detection and response, SOC SIM, which is an acronym for security incident and event management, a way of seeing just beyond the endpoint and being able to see the visibility of the entire network and gather logs that actually help in forensic investigations.
David, I think you're breaking up there a little. At least I can't hear you. I'm not sure about the. Perhaps, David, may I suggest until the audio has corrected itself and connection, perhaps for the audience here to have Wayne and Matt to help out and perhaps as well share their knowledge. What they believe some tools for the target audience could be of use. Wayne, why don't I ask you, please?
Sure. So, security needs to be integrated in layers. So each layer, some layers could be tools, and there are a lot of tools out there. So, the two-factor authentication tool is always a big one. Other tools and what David was mentioning that are scanning the machine constantly, not just for malicious activity, but one activity here, another activity, and those paired together, which may be considered separate, but from an AI point of view, could be, if they're working together, could be malicious. So starting to collect that type of information now is becoming, and that's what helps on the zero-day attacks, because there's no protection against this vulnerability. So we want to look for suspicious movements, like trying to look at steps in the mud, and we're noticing there's correlations between one or the other, and then they can be presented forward to a team to analyze and see if this is a real threat or not. So essentially putting a spotlight on it, oh yes, that's definitely a chain of footsteps we see going in the wrong direction. Now we're going to take action to keep that out from our environment. So that's one of the biggest ones out there, especially on the 0-day attack, is very, very helpful. And David, I think that's what you were talking to when you were kind of cutting out there. You were talking along those lines with regards to those tools. Yeah,
I was. Hopefully, you guys can hear me better. I just switched it to a different network.
It seems to be better. Seems to be better now. Thank you.
Good. Sure. Sorry, everyone.
No worries. The fun times, the life of technology. So we come and go, and we just manage to, as a team, discuss it all together. David, is there anything you wanted to add before you?
No, I think Wayne really kind of covered there. It's really just the ability to add extended visibility beyond just the endpoint. Traditional legacy antivirus, which is what a lot of, small to medium-sized businesses will run today, is maybe a legacy antivirus software that just really isn't up to speed and really up to the level of sophistication that the hackers are up to nowadays. And so it's a need to really take ownership of that risk that the business owner ultimately owns. They're the data owner. The data owner owns the liability for their data. And so having help from an ideological, to come in and do a security risk assessment is really, to Wayne's point, going to shine a light on where are the vulnerabilities, where can we make recommendations so that they can show that SMB owner, I'm not, don't take my word for it, here's what the report shows. And then to Matt's point, insurance companies a lot of times are mandating certain things, and it's another way to align the recommendations along with what their insurance policy probably says, and the owner may not even realize that.
Thank you for that addition, Matt. Wayne, before we move on to one other question that I have under this pillar for today's conversation, is there anything you wish to add?
No.
Not.
I think it's well covered. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. The next point, I think, Wayne, you had briefly touched upon. You mentioned government as well. And we, as part of the Cyber Right Now group, but also Chamber, yes, we do engage with the federal government here in Canada on various levels. And I just want to hear from your view, and anybody here on the panel also from the US, of course, how are the different levels of government in the United States and also Canada, from your point of view, are engaging on cyber, looking at cyber, investing in cybersecurity? So who would like to start off?
Well, from the Canadian side, and we've been on those meetings, there's obviously engagement from various levels that we've seen, including CSIS, which is the Canadian spy agency, if you don't know what that is for the US folks, all the way to that level, coming all through on the different attack vectors and building tools actually that they can utilize in government systems, but even making it available for businesses as well. They're kind of on the cusp of that, potentially being a thing. We're pushing, at least from a small business perspective, very much on an education front. In the meantime, while this stuff is evolving and coming to fruition, education should be pushed across the board and encouraged. Obviously there's IT companies out there who know that this stuff needs to happen, so they're actioning that, but not everyone are. And some businesses don't even have good IT companies at all, so they don't know what they don't know. So trying to push that education front out there, which is being discussed, definitely on how could that be deployed from a government level. And then, as well as was mentioned, insurance is a great avenue, and this has definitely been suggested, and they're considering is from an insurance point of view, how can we can be engaged there to maybe put some mandates down where you have to have this certain level of cybersecurity tools in order to get the insurance or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of tricky the way the insurance works in Canada, but they're definitely talking about that and considering that as an avenue, because David, as you said, insurance companies are, I remember, we do the cybersecurity application for a lot of our clients are filling out the forms. It's gone from half a page to now like 6 pages of questions, because they're definitely getting wise to it and are definitely asking better questions now these days. I'm sure they paid out a lot of stuff they didn't want to pay out. So
I guess we all live and learn, right? Also the insurance companies. So Matt and David, from a US perspective, would you like to share your view here on government initiatives and their involvement and view of cybersecurity?
Well, I think just, like Wayne was saying, it's just becoming more and more prevalent and more serious, to the point where there was signed legislation here in the US back, I think it was March of this year, and there was a Cyber Incident Reporting Act that was signed by President Biden, which was really, they identified 16 critical industries or infrastructure sectors in which they required them to report cyber incidents within 72 hours if they're experiencing a cyber attack, and within 24 hours of making a ransomware payment. So, industries that are, chemical industries, communications, defense, healthcare, just, to name a few, but there's about 16 critical sectors that they're requiring them to report within 72 hours of experiencing an attack or 24 hours of making a ransomware payment. So they're taking it very seriously now, because in a lot of cases, companies don't want to report, due to reputation, brand, things like that can suffer. So, and to get ahead of this, I think it's becoming mandated.
And in Canada, they're just starting that, actually, the mandatory reporting part. So
yeah.
Yep.
So that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, thank you. Matt, is there anything you wish to add, or do you want me to move on to the what organizations could or should be doing?
Honestly, just to add to it, everything that, was already said was in place. Yeah, we're seeing it coming down from, the White House. There's specific websites now on our U.S. government websites now for companies to understand and learn the different things, that they need to do to protect themselves. So there's definitely a lot more involvement that there was, and it's definitely helping change things for the better as well. That's what I'll add to it.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, you're ahead of the game, so we will catch up eventually. And in terms of what we touched upon this already, but maybe in more detail for those who are here today, what could or should organizations really be doing to prevent cyber incidents and attacks? And I really say today, and again, looking into the future, there was a lot of mentioning as well, Wayne, you talked about AI as well. There is AI-driven cybersecurity and so forth. So maybe any specifics and implementable solutions again. Matt, for example, how much time and money, I mean, that might be a bit of a loaded question, but should really an organization spend on their cybersecurity efforts?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, but honestly, it's really as much as they need to. It's really hard to put a number on it, but I think what every organization really needs to understand is they need to know that that it is a threat and it's real. There is the idea that we're just going to pretend and it's just going to go away is not a really good practice, and I would argue that it's actually almost dangerous in order to do that. Consulting with a good professional, a good IT professional or a trusted company, or IT consultant that understands this world, understands how to proactively identify these things and to has basically a cybersecurity strategy in a proven approach to protect a company, and also not only to protect but also to quickly recover from an incident is going to be your best bet. And if you don't have a strategic partner in that area, if you don't have anybody in there, definitely start asking, because it's unfortunately it's becoming more problematic today. And the key here is to just have a good framework in place to not only identify the equipment and the computers and the servers and everything that you have to run your business, but look at incident response, looking at detection, looking at how to proactively respond to those types of incidences or potential threats that are out there, and ultimately how to recover. It's an ongoing practice. So having the right people in place and the right partnerships in place is going to be very important. So that's I think that's the key to the approach. And as far as how much we spend it's really gonna value, and it's really gonna vary. And honestly, risk is different for every company. So how much is too much and how little is too little. Understanding to every business, what are the things that are going to be what's really critical, how much data can you lose, and how much downtime can you take as a company is going to be a really important thing to understand. So, there you go.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will let the other panelists comment as well, and I agree amounts might be difficult, but I was just thinking about it further. There are certain percentages when you plan your strategic plan or business plan that you will allocate, which sometimes gets forgotten. Other considerations have often priority, and I think that goes back to the awareness and education of the importance of investment in cybersecurity, time, finances, resources, talent, and so forth, and equipment. Wayne, David, is there anything you wish to add to this question, comment?
I'll let Wayne go first if you like, if you have something.
A little bit, not huge. I mean, Matt covered a great amount of stuff there, but constantly engaging with that IT company that you're with is super important to understand what those costs are, and kind of always have it in your mind that there might be some more investment next year that needs to be done. So you need to kind of consider, at least from a budget perspective. And then once you sit down and analyze with that IT company about whether that action you need to do is actually going to be something you need to worry about, or is there another thing they could do, as opposed to spending more money on that. Because you're right, you can't just keep spending money until the moon. But considering a budget increase, regularly, at least on the cybersecurity front, super important to at least consider, and not just think it's going to be business as usual in 2 years, 3 years with regards to costs on tools, because there will be more that you need to do. Eventually, everyone catches up depending on what industry you're in. So that's really my kind of contribution on that, is just considering the budget. Always there needs to be some sort of consideration to an increase to help continue to protect yourselves. And some of it may be insurance-wise, maybe it's premiums, et cetera, because those obviously increase as the attack level increases as well in the environment. So we want to keep that in mind.
So definitely an element of the business and strategic plan every year, sometimes maybe quarterly, to be reviewed. David, any other comments on this?
No, I think they're spot on. I mean, I think when you kind of ask what can business owners do, it's to work with an ideological to do the security risk assessment. The first thing they need to do is just identify what data do they have that they need to protect. How, like Matt had said, what level of risk are they comfortable with? Because the business owner and the data owner owns the liability and the risk here. The managed service provider is there to help them through that journey of cybersecurity and better cyber hygiene. One of the best analogies I heard was that you go to the doctor at 1 month and they tell you you're in great health, Dave. But, that doesn't mean that if I go out and I eat a bunch of Twinkies and, drink too much or do something I shouldn't be doing, that I'm not going to be in terrible health a month from now. It's a constant maintenance type of a thing. And same with cybersecurity. Because the attacks are constantly evolving, you do need to be planning for this. And I think budgeting for it. And so starting out with the assessment about being able to identify what is important to the business, what do you need to be protecting? And this kind of goes back to Matt's point about, and Wayne's point about following frameworks, like NIST and any kind of framework that the country of Canada is going to adhere to in terms of good cybersecurity. But it's being able to identify what's valuable. How will you go about protecting it? To your point, Ulrike, about using tools like MDR, SIM, and SOC to protect. But what happens when that protection breaks down? It's about being able to detect where are they in the environment? Where have they been? What have they encrypted? What data have they taken? And then how can you respond? Are you set up? Is the company set up to respond and then ultimately recover from an attack and get back to business as usual. And too often with small to medium-sized businesses and the cost of an attack, we don't see the respond and recover piece in some cases. And so again, it's starting out with the assessment and identifying where are you vulnerable, and then being open to looking at how are you strategically budgeting for cybersecurity in today's day and age.
Yeah, thank you, David. Very
Sure.
passionate about this. I love it. This is great.
Sure.
No, seriously. And while we talk about the recovery, or possibly at times you may not be able to recover, somebody on the panel mentioned also the reputation that can be at risk, right? If you are not taking good care of your data, your customers, your employees, and so forth, reputational risk is sometimes actually irreversible. So that is definitely a very major consideration. So we are familiar, I believe, with the saying, it's not about the if, but when it happens, but there seems to be a new saying around that was brought to my attention. I'd like to hear your view on this. You're already compromised. You just don't know it. So that's, again, a pretty scary assessment of a situation. Any comments on this, perhaps even examples of where it may have happened, or any advice? And how do we even find out that you have been compromised, but you don't know it, but it's already happening, and I wouldn't want to say too late. We want to give everybody here optimistic hope, and that there is actually a solution to this. Best to avoid it and to prevent it, but once you're there, what are the next steps, and what do you think about this? David, can I stay with you as you're already on the screen? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I think if it's one of those where you're already compromised, it kind of goes back to something I may have mentioned earlier about dwell time. In a lot of cases, businesses don't even realize that attackers, when they deliver a ransomware email, they've already been in the environment for, in some cases, 100 and something days. I've heard dwell times of 125 days, 180 days, that type of a thing, where attackers can be living in the business's environment and setting up back doors and doing, all kinds of shady things to basically be figuring out what's valuable in that business's network. And they could have already encrypted the files, exfiltrated the data that they need. And by the time that business owner gets the ransomware, they've already been there and done what they needed to do. They're now telling you, we've been there and done what we needed to do.
David, I don't think I can hear you anymore or see you, unfortunately. That is a little bit of a déjà vu, which is we have practiced with this now. We see Wayne or Matt. Would you like to continue while David is trying to come back online? Wayne, I see you there with a smile, so maybe it's your turn.
I was going to say Matt could go next, but so with regards to what you can do, part of the thing when these new attack vectors come in, there's usually already something in place that can already protect against it, just maybe not widely used yet because people haven't adopted, because the vector isn't there. It's not as common. So again, a good IT company will watch for those threat vectors that come up, and then there's usually some sort of procedure, a tool, a service of some kind that'll help get ahead of that. So keeping in tune with those and engaging with those is really the best thing you can do at this particular juncture. Again, the 0 day being really big, so trying to be proactive on that, that's super crazy. It's still really tough to get ahead of that, but a lot of the tools they have are actually very smart, and we've been able to get some vectors in before they're able to do anything. But yeah, the laying low time, the most we've seen, I haven't seen 100 days. That's a lot. 2 weeks is the most we've seen. But again, having another tool in place that's kind of more prevalent now, more common now, would have caught that, maybe on day 1 or 2 instead of day 14. So.
Yeah, Matt, thank you very much. Matt, over to you, please.
Yeah, as far as people sitting on the network, in the what you said, are you already compromised? You just don't know it. Not sure if I entirely agree 100% with that statement, but what I can say is that if you don't have the tools to determine if you're compromised or not, how are you going to know? You can't protect what you don't know. And so as far as the time somebody sets is actually on a network, actually latest data that we've gotten out of a couple different reports from the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, through Verizon, and also through IBM. That number is now up to 287 days. And there is, and of that time, it kind of breaks down to like 200 and some days of them actually in there and not being detected. And then about another 75 plus days, give or take, to actually remediate that breach. So they can really be in there for a long time. To David's point, it's concerning because they could be sitting there for a long time and just gathering data about you, or anything. They could be looking at files, they can be looking at bank statements, they can be looking at any of this stuff, and then really planning a strategic ransomware attack to cripple your business. And the unfortunate thing is the for the most part, the majority of the time, that the way that they're getting in and gaining access is still through phishing. It's through those emails. It's through those sophisticated social engineering campaigns that they're doing. And people think like, oh, I'm smart enough to know when a phishing email comes in. I've seen some of the latest ones, and I'm telling you, I almost fall for them myself because they are that good. They're well crafted. And you got to understand, this is not just a couple people trying to get into a business or to try to hack a small business. It's a well organized team, and there's big money involved, and they're throwing everything they possibly can at you. So that's really the contributing cause. From the FBI, from 2018 to 2020, they saw about a 917 percentage increase in attacks, in phishing attacks to people in the United States. That was specific within the SMB market, which is 500 employees or less. So not only are we seeing increases in phishing, but we're seeing a very strategic approach and direct path to the small to mid-sized business, because most enterprises and large companies have been ahead of the game for a little bit. They've done what they can to lock everything up. And they know that the attackers know that there's a big gap that's out there for the SMB market, because historically they haven't had the ability to protect themselves in these types of methods, but now they do. So there you go.
Thank you very much, Matt. My goodness, if you think over 200 days somebody is lurking in your environment and lives with you without you knowing it, that's really a very uncomfortable thought. And it shows where we've come to. And so in that regard, I mentioned 3 areas before, and it's great that we are all touching upon them at the same time, so they all come together. In that context, if a business leader or any IT controller, they would look for advice and say, I only have so much budget available. Where do I even start? Is it talent? Is it tools? Is it education? Is there any particular order of priority? What should I focus on first? I'm interested in getting started and taking this really seriously and upon myself and my company. So what is your advice here as experts on the panel, if anyone comes with such a question and is seriously interested in improving and ensuring they're cyber secure? Matt, you're nodding. Maybe I start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think at least our stance is that education is going to really be a big proponent of that. That it used to be back 20 years ago, you need hardware and software to protect your company. You could throw a piece of software in place. You can put a firewall in place, for example, and for the most part, you're protected. As the business environment has changed, as remote work has changed, and people are outside of the organization now, as far as education is concerned, having a well thought out strategic cybersecurity training program is going to be key. And I don't mean a once a year or once a quarter training. I'm talking about a program from your provider or your partner that is going to actually simulate these attacks for your company, to where you are going to get specific data about, down to the user level, about who's clicking on what type of threat do they potentially, they could have potentially let in, and then following up with those individuals and giving them specific training and have that awareness. That's going to be it's going to be really key. From there, I think there's different avenues you can take, but really having a good understanding of your technology. Going back to that identify, you can't protect what you don't know what you don't have. So having just a good visibility on all of those assets that are key to your company, all those computers, those laptops, all of that stuff, and making sure that you have the right things as simple as spam filtering, antivirus, that type of stuff in place. To start, that's where it would go, and then from there you can build from there. So I'll let you guys add to what you think you'd like to add in there too.
David, you are back, have been for a while, which is fantastic. Do you have anything? Would you like to add something?
Yeah, apologies for the network issues. Yes, I would just kind of reiterate that I would start with the assessment, because just to Matt's point, you really don't know what you don't know until you do the assessment and can see where you're vulnerable. And then from there, your provider can make recommendations, because at small to medium-sized businesses, they need to realize that at some point they're going to need to eat the elephant, and you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? And so it's going to be taking some actionable steps in cybersecurity. Use the assessment as that roadmap to see where those top recommendations would be, and then go from there, because it will be a journey.
Wayne, is there, thank you, David, something you wish to add?
No, they both stole my thunder. The assessment is a great place to start, because not only just running a tool or whatever, even just sitting down and talking about the business and how transactions are made or how they function in the cloud, on premise, stuff like that, all goes into this assessment piece that David was talking about. Great place to start, because at least gives you that path on where you need to focus on first, which areas, and then work from there.
And if I may allow myself to stay with you, Wayne, we've talked a lot about phishing, which is and the sophistication as well. So how can someone, I don't know, prevent from becoming a victim? I mean, that might go back to education as well and being aware, but as we say, they become more sophisticated, and we, talking about it, might also sometimes are about to fall for it. We've seen that within my own organization as well. And in addition to the phishing question, I would like to as well know if somebody already clicked on that link or the attachment and shouldn't have to, because they really thought it was from one of their colleagues or stakeholders. What do you do then? Because now you clicked on it and invited the trouble into the house. Yeah.
Yes, no, exactly. So part of what we tell people is, we want kind of a certain, very, low level of paranoia level out there, just to give you that little bit of pause, just to, nothing urgent, dealing with money, ask you to click a link, asking you to open an attachment that, you're not quite sure what it is. All these are flags. So, we can go through more detail. Hopefully your IT provider is actually providing you this, but certain cues you can find in emails that make it look suspicious, certain actions that you shouldn't be doing. Nothing really should be that urgent that you have to rush and click on something right away. So we want that pause, 5 seconds pause, just to look at things a bit closer. Is it actually coming from where it's coming from? And even if it all looks really, really good, even contacting that person if they're asking you to actually do some sort of transaction or click on something, just to make sure are good steps to take to be cautious on the email. Now, if you happen to actually click it and things we just kind of put people, if you notice something, Alyssa's going to shut down your machine immediately and unplug the network cable, call your IT provider immediately. That at least prevents it from spreading on your machine or potentially the network. And you kind of just take yourself offline for the moment until that can be properly assessed. So, but yeah, that pause and not people, because people still fall for gift card scams. I still see that. That's like the oldest trick in the book now. And, and it's because of some sort of urgent email. It looks like it's coming for your boss, but it's not. And they're just ready to jump and move. And, just take that extra 5 seconds. Is this legitimate? Make a call, double check, confirm. All good. So that's what we recommend generally to our clients.
I like your recommendation on just take a break. We actually always say also pause, slow down. And we are also busy on different devices. It's making music everywhere. We get alerted, and then we just want to squeeze in that one email and click that attachment. Slow down, pause, take a break, take a breather. I mean, this is such really great advice. It seems so simple, and yet, as we're also busy and always trying to be really hectic in our schedules. That's, again, another vulnerability and opportunity. Matt, is there anything you wish, in particular also to the phishing topic, or anything that Wayne just shared with us? Would you like to add anything there?
As far as, phishing is concerned, I will say that kind of many organizations, I still kind of say they're not doing enough. Again, kind of what I've already said, people kind of always thought you could just kind of put hardware and stuff in place and, you're good. But to Wayne's point, that's one of the things we teach here too, is that it's, to pause, to stop, to really look at that. Don't reply to an email if you think it's suspicious, because that's another way that they can potentially get in. Call that person instead, pop your head over the cubicle, in the office and say, hey, did you really send this to me? Do you really want me to wire $100,000? Do you really want me to get gift cards? Those are all very good points. And unfortunately, the ones that we think we would never fall victim to, other people are. So it takes all of us to better the cybersecurity hygiene for the company.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It goes back to my earlier comment. It starts with us and myself as well, and being accountable. And before we go to the questions from the audience, David, is there anything you wish to add to that topic that we just discussed?
I was just going to say, I agree with everything they were just mentioning in terms of the phishing piece, but just to go back quickly to what you were saying about where can they start, I think on top of just the assessment, when you're meeting with, your ideological team to review or go over the security assessment, I think one way to understand best where the business owner needs to start is to bring a copy of their cyber insurance policy with them to that meeting, because they can take a look. If any of these business owners are in a highly regulated environment, healthcare with HIPAA or finance or government, then that insurance policy might help them dictate where they need to focus their attention, because they may have specific requirements within that policy that say you need to have multi-factor authentication, you need to have managed detection and response, you need to have SIM. Those are your minimum standards. Because your healthcare or finance, those other SMB owners that maybe don't have those highly regulated environments, they may not have all of those standards. They may need to, have a different set of recommendations made just based on budget as well as minimum standards that they need to upkeep. So that may be another great place to start, is when you're starting with the assessment, bring a copy of the cyber insurance policy so that you can align where you need to focus and where you need to start, so that you're in compliance with what cyber insurance companies are asking of you today. So
I really like the focus today, as well as on cyber insurance. I must say that because this is a conversation we just recently have been having within our own membership and with organizations. So important. So thank you so much for bringing this into the conversation, and all the other points, of course. We do have a few questions from the audience, and let me have a look at them here to see And those people, which is really fantastic that they have made the effort and handed in and show really that interest to participate. One question is, which we may have touched upon, what is the disturbing trend you see cyber criminals using to gain access to environments? Is there anyone on this panel who would like to take this one and get started?
You know, I'll take this one here.
Thank you.
One of the things that, like we've talked about, we've talked a lot about phishing, but that's still across every type of report, from the latest data from the FBI, from our partners at Verizon, through IBM, it's still phishing, because it's the human element that is unfortunately the problem. Whether it's stolen credentials or links that people are clicking on, these criminals have. What's disturbing is that these criminals have far more resources today than they have in the past. The dark web, it sounds scary. I wish we could come up with a different name for it, to be honest with you, but it's a highly organized group of people, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that are going in there, and there's full marketplaces. It's a whole nother economy that is all working with digital currencies to buy and sell services, creating custom ransomware, selling and buying of credentials to do things like credential stuffing, to where people can gain access. And the unfortunate thing is that it continues to grow. And the other thing that's disturbing too, that we've seen evidence of, and from people that we brought on into our, that the younger generation seems to be more aware of this, and it seems like not only do companies got to worry about a data breach or stolen credentials and all this other stuff, even as far as disgruntled employees, people that have been terminated from a company and feel wrongly that they were terminated, know about these things, and are actually working with hackers, hacking as a service. To Wayne's point, we've seen some growing trends in this as well, where people that are not educated about, or highly educated, in cyber or hacking themselves, but will list the services of these individuals to make known to them these different vulnerabilities there, and try to overtake a company, or to deploy a ransom or something to that effect. So it's unfortunately it is growing, but the good news is that there are a lot of things that you can do to protect yourself. So that's what I would say is some of the more kind of disturbing trends that I've seen recently.
What I like to provide a quick comment saying, thank you, Matt, for bringing actually up the internal threat. We talk a lot about external, but you brought current and also former employees. That is definitely an area of concern. And thank you for bringing this to this conversation. One sometimes seems to forget. Wayne and David, is there anything you wish to add, or would you like me to move on to the next question?
I think you can move on. Matt did very well on that question.
I move on. So you feel we've done well. So we need your approval for that. There you go. The next question would be, we talked about cyber insurance. So how, and when I stay with you, I'd like to hear the Canadian view here as well, because cyber insurance is so important. How has the attitude around cyber insurance shifted given the increase in high profile cyber incidents? Is there anything for you to share?
Well, it's definitely been shifting the way people approach cybersecurity, what they engage in. So a couple in the summer, there were a couple of renewals for some of our clients, and they required very high level, and we had to actually do some quick action deployments of certain security measures, including an MDM solution in one case, in order to meet the minimum requirements for the cybersecurity. And we had like a month to do it because they're expiring in a month. So we're definitely seeing a shift in that respect, where insurance companies are asking for a lot more, demanding higher requirements. And yeah, we're analyzing those and telling them whether they meet them or not. So that in a way is driving people to do better on their cybersecurity or their tools and their systems to protect themselves. So definitely seeing that starting for us. It was in the summer we saw that kind of so far. And as others renew, I'm sure we're going to see more of it.
I would like to call it a positive trend. This
Yes.
is absolutely so. And ending on that positive trend and note, I would like to invite everyone, as we are nearing the end of the webinar, to have perhaps one last statement and advice that you would give and leave the audience with. Perhaps one statement where you say one takeaway you want the audience to know and take back to their businesses or colleagues. David, what do you have to share there? Thank you.
Well, thank you first of all for having me to the discussion. But I would just reiterate that the business owner is the one who owns the liability in this scenario, and your provider is really there to try and help steward that data and be keep you in a better lowered risk exposure type situation. But the best way to do that is the assessment and evaluating where you're vulnerable.
Thank you very much, David. Matt, how about you?
As far as one takeaway, I will encourage everybody is to really engage either with your current IT provider, your current IT person or team, and really make sure that really to start the conversation of making sure that you are doing everything that you possibly can in order to have a good cybersecurity strategy. Don't think that this is just something that we're here just talking about and it's something that isn't going to happen just because it hasn't happened already. That's one of the biggest mistakes I think anybody in this day and age can make. It is really truly, I think, a matter of time for most people. And if you aren't having your network and your security, level essentially upgraded, you're going to have these open vulnerabilities, and people are going to see that, and then they are going to attack you. So, you really want to make sure that you can do everything you possibly can to reduce the overall risk within reason. And in order to do that, it's really talking to the professionals. And if you feel that maybe you don't have that person right now or that team with you right now, to reach out to your network, reach out to other trusted individuals and say, who are you talking with about this? Who's a good resource? Me, along with Idealogical, we're all part of several different peer groups as well. And even though maybe you're viewing this and you see that maybe you're part of maybe you're on the other side of the world, or you're in a different state, or area, there's people that we talk with and other MSPs and partners that we talk across the United States and also Canada. So the reality is that somebody who is trusted and has a good practice and plan in place is available to you. So definitely take the time to reach out and start that process today versus waiting.
Thank you, Matt and Wayne.
Yeah, I mean, David and Matt said a lot. The only thing I'll add is, there used to be an old adage, we're just too small of a company, people don't want to hack us. That is not the case anymore. They don't look at it that way. So, everyone needs to kind of treat it on the same level of seriousness. Doing that audit, absolutely. Engaging those conversations with your IT providers. And sometimes it feels like we're just trying to peddle new services or tools just to, gain a buck. It's actually not the case. We spend a lot of time and effort looking at what's happening and how to respond to those or how to be proactive on these particular attacks. So we're actually recommending them for good reason. And we've seen it actually happen, whether it be through case studies or maybe sometimes across our own set of clients that we deal with. But yeah, that's very good reason. That's why we do these information, webinars and sessions exactly is to show those and put them on display so everyone can be well informed, so you can make an educated decision on how you want to approach your business.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, David. Thank you, Matt and Wayne as well. And thank you, Idealogical, for putting on this session and educating us more. And I feel always the journey has just begun, because it's an ongoing conversation, as it should be. And it all starts with us. As we said, there's a lot of human element as well involved, and only technology is only often as good as the end user, as the same often applies to policies. So thank you once again. And to the audience, you, from what I understand, can find this recording in the future online. And you can gladly and please broadly share it. It was a very important conversation, and I look forward to more. So everybody have a wonderful rest of the day. And
thank you for mediating as well. Appreciate your help today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, everybody.